After the dispersal of the protests, the Prime Minister of Georgia spoke about the impossibility of the Maidan scenario. How will the Georgian confrontation end? Today we are talking with Vasily Sikuralidze, former ambassador of Georgia to the United States of America. Vasily, hello.
Hello, good evening.
We are now having a live broadcast on the YouTube channel, so I ask our viewers, please be active, like this broadcast, write your comments in the chat, and of course, you can put your questions to our guest. The situation in Georgia is really tense now. Do you think Kobakhidze is so afraid to prevent the Maidan? And can he really complete his rule like Yanukovych?
Yes, probably, because they did everything to usurp power. The last elections do not stand up to criticism. First of all, we've seen everything. Everything, practically. Starting from voter intimidation, ballot stuffing, manipulation of voter lists, unlawful removal of monitors from polling stations, and the almost complete violation of the secrecy of voting during the elections. And no democratic country congratulated Ivanishvili. And his group with these elections. So these elections were in violation of the constitution. Without the invitation of the president. Less than 2 to 3 votes they gathered. Called themselves the parliament and called themselves the government. This is our situation. People took to the streets after that. They still went out into the street. A few days ago, the so-called Prime Minister issued a statement that they suspend the country's integration with the European Union. This is also a violation of the Constitution, since we have it spelled out in the Constitution that the government should follow. So now the people have come out for the 4th day. Demonstrations have taken place before, but for the last 2 days there has been such a big demonstration. More demonstrations. In recent days, the police have been cracking down on demonstrators and journalists with particular brutality. And they deliberately announced a hunt for journalists. A lot, more than a dozen journalists ended up in hospitals. And they are in dire straits. So here we are talking to you now. About 100,000 people are now again standing on the streets, on the square in front of the Parliament of Georgia. And this demonstration continues. Practically, more than 180 diplomats at the Georgian Ministry of Foreign Affairs have started to make statements. They made statements that are not supporting the statement of the so-called Prime Minister. There are also dozens of people who are from other departments, who also make these statements. So we have a big national consensus. This is no longer political. Not even a party demonstration. This is much wider, because the whole society participates in this.
You are talking about the fact that journalists are now being targeted. At the same time, the crackdown is really brutal, and we have seen all this video. Do you think the tactics of the Russian special services are used here? which they use there and in Belarus. We understand that such tactics are constantly used in Russia, or are these some Georgian methods?
No, of course, this mirrors the fact that what Russia is doing, this intimidation of demonstrators, intimidation of society, intimidation, this is a typical Russian tactic. Since this group itself, which calls itself the Georgian Dream, this is a typical Russian group, it is even difficult to call it a political group. This is such a group that has seized power for 12 years in the country. It rules. This is kleptocracy. And this intimidation is the same method which is used by the Kremlin at home. So they almost mirror this method. Police brutality. If you've watched the video, there are a lot of videos. This cruelty is not isolated cases or cases that one crazy or another crazy cop uses. This is clearly observed that this is such a tactic which is used by these services.
And what do you think? This story that you say, that Kobakhidze is afraid of this now, but history does not teach anything from the current government of Georgia? Or are the Russian special services in Georgia trying to pull off some other scenario now?
And when has history ever taught authoritarians? They always think that history will not repeat itself on them. I think that yes, they think that they will succeed what Yanukovych did not do. There are a lot of parallels. Of course, history does not repeat itself in 100% accuracy. But a lot of analogies can be found with the situation with Yanukovych. And I think that the one who wants to understand this must understand what happened in Ukraine during the Yanukovych era.
Yes, we also understand this. Would you like to add more?
Nothing. I just said that the tactics are almost the same.
At the same time, Georgia, most likely, has its own path, most likely, but it is. And what do you think are the differences at this stage of the Georgian revolution, the differences from the Maidan? Perhaps there are differences from the uprising of Belarusians in 2020. What do you see specifically Georgian in all this?
This process has begun. This process is very long. The first protests, large mass protests, began in the spring of this year, when the Georgian Dream pushed through the Russian bill of the Kremlin type against non-governmental organizations. The so-called Bill on Foreign Agents, which undermines the work of non-governmental organizations and independent media organizations. Their air processes almost for 3 months. There were big trials. Where they were very serious. I think they're going to go on for now. The main thing we will achieve is, the main thing I think is that we need to achieve, it is a repeat election.
Do you think the Georgian Dream will go to the repeat elections, or will everything depend on the situation? Or is it not only about re-elections, but also about a change in the current government?
Yes, of course. Judging by what has appeared in the exit polls, and what we know, There is no way the Georgian dream can win and gain a majority. It's impossible. The only way. What could they do? These were the violations with which these elections were held. People want to achieve repeat elections. And of course, the elections should be held by not the same people who held the so-called previous elections, because it was almost a catastrophic situation.
This law on foreign agents, which you talked about, do you think it was a kind of marker for the Georgian authorities? To what extent will the people put up with it and, accordingly, to what extent can Georgian people be oppressed after the elections?
Yes, of course, there are forceful tactics to break Georgian society. Georgian society, despite the fact that this group seized power 12 years ago, civil society was still strong. And so they launched an open attack against civil society. Because they had seized almost all political institutions and wanted to break civil society. At this point, they have not succeeded, despite pushing through. Well, how did they push through? They voted. Since they had a majority in parliament and they voted. After these elections, Georgian President Salome Zurabishvili did not recognize these elections. And in practice, society does not recognize this. And now these protests are practically about this. 2 points. 1 point about elections, and another point about the policy of European integration, which they suspended. The country's integration into the European Union was unilaterally suspended. Also a violation of the Constitution.
In the chat now our viewers write to this broadcast in the comments. Tatiana Yeremeva writes, "Withdraw heavy equipment, otherwise you will lose, but do not repeat the mistake of the Russian and Belarusian opposition." Do you think this can really happen? That is, we understand that Belarus is still a parliamentary state. Can any heavy means be used against the people now? And how dangerous is there now for the protesters?
In the last 2 days, very brutal methods were used against the protesters. But you know, after these cruel methods, more people come. Every day, more people come in after these atrocities. And the tougher they act, the more people will come. Of course, and this is the most important thing. What is remarkable is that these are young people, students and young people. These are the main protesters. They play the main role in these processes. This is very significant because the future belongs to these people. They want to have a better future for themselves. And they do not accept what is happening in the country now. These are even those people who were born in the 21st century and a little older. These are the main protesters, but, of course, other people. Almost all generations are involved in these processes, but the main role is played by young people, which is very significant.
If we talk about the fact that now the Georgian opposition, the opposition forces have not been such a strong opposition for a long time. Then, before the elections, they united, and this became such a serious opposition to the current Georgian dream. Now, how do you assess the opposition forces? Are they able to really resist the current Georgian dream in power? And are they able to lead the people to the results that Georgians now want to achieve?
Good question. You know, I myself often hear a lot of criticism about the Georgian opposition. Of course, an authoritarian regime would not be authoritarian if it provided an opportunity for a normal political life in the country. These political parties were persecuted for the last 12 years, or I don't know how long, maybe more. And it is certainly not a well-structured, well-funded party. No, this is not true. And of course they have a lot of problems, both organizational and political. But it doesn't matter now. All these four parties, the main four opposition parties, it is no longer a question of who is a socialist there, or a leftist, or a rightist, or a centrist. This already has a tertiary meaning. Now the most important thing is that Georgia does not fall into this abyss of authoritarianism irrevocably. And I think that all four parties, all political forces and also civil society understand that now we are not talking about who will be in charge. Over the past 30 years, we have had such moments in the history of our country. It was in the 90s, it was in the early 2000s, and now this is also a very strong, serious situation. Since Russia, the Russian special services and Russia in general want to turn our country into some, I don't know, the same kleptocratic autocracy as it built itself.
If we talk about the opposition and the fact that opposition forces are being persecuted now, there is an example, for example, of Belarus. Svetlana Tikhanovskaya has left, Yulia Navalny, who positions herself as part of the Russian opposition already. Salome Zurabashvili is still in Georgia now, she is with the people, she addresses the people. In connection with these persecutions, do you think the leaders of the Georgian opposition can leave? How useful will they be, being, let's say, abroad?
You know, Salome Zurabishvili, she is the president now. And she, as far as I understand, is not going anywhere and is going to continue the fight. I think that almost all the leaders who are there now, they do not plan to leave, they plan to continue their struggle. I hope that it will be a successful fight. Let's see, now the fate of Georgia for the future is being decided, a few December, so we have no right to lose.
If we talk about the fact that now the authorities are planning the election of a new president, and December 14th is election day, and allegedly there will be an inauguration on the 29th. This is the rush to re-elect a new candidate. Are falsifications planned, and why is it so fast, or is it planned?
You know, they have changed the constitution and the new elections are held in a strange way. These are not general presidential elections. Also, the president is a very comical figure, chosen by the Georgian dream. He doesn't even have supreme nakedness. Former football player. And he is known for the fact that in the Georgian language he very often uses Skabra speech. And that's what he's known for. This is his most famous political achievement. So no one takes this election seriously. So, the main struggle is now going on, so that we protect our rights and protect our country.
If we talk about what you say, that now people are gathering in front of the parliament again, that hundreds of thousands of people have gathered again, if we talk about some kind of turning point, when people just understand for sure that this government needs to be demolished, that they will not go anywhere. For us, these were the first victims on the Maidan. What can it be for Georgians?
You know, Georgians can go there and stand there, and it will never end. And I think we have stories from the last decades. I think these demonstrations will continue every day. Continue every day. Since the brutality of the police, the brutality of the authorities against the demonstrators, against our children, against the journalists, against everyone. It only increased our enthusiasm to go there and become the defense of our country. We have no other country. I personally do not want to leave my country. Why should I leave? So we have no other choice. We must stay and protect our democracy, our choice, our independence. Our ancestors did fight, die, dream about it. And we cannot give the dream of our previous generations so easily to some Kremlin psychopath.
This Kremlin, as you called him, psychopath, he now has a situation of influence in the world. Even the situation with partners is not very good, and Russia has really thrown all its forces into the war in Ukraine. How do you assess the resources? Can the Kremlin really retain influence in Georgia and support this Georgian dream? And how long can it be? That's what Russia has in terms of resources regarding Georgia.
Yes, if you look, almost every day they make a statement of support. Almost no one supports. It even came to the comic. We do not have any diplomatic relations. We broke off diplomatic relations with Venezuela, since this degenerate Hugo Chavez at one time recognized Abkhazia as the occupied territory of Georgia. He recognized Abkhazia and Tbilisi, the Tbilisi region, as independent countries, as he wanted to please Russia. And we tore it up. And after these so-called elections, do you know who congratulated the Georgian dream on its victory? Here is this Maduro, with whom we do not have diplomatic relations, who did almost the same in his homeland as the Georgian dream. Kremlin support sometimes reaches a comical situation. And I think we have to confront. And what Ukraine is doing. We have practically, to be honest, for 3 years now, together with you, we have been experiencing every day, every hour what is happening in Ukraine and supporting you. I don't know how to explain what you are doing. Your struggle is not only struggle of the Ukrainian people, but also the struggle of all freedom-loving people. Ukraine is fighting for all freedom-loving people on earth. And it is at war with this evil, which could overwhelm the whole world, all of Europe, if Ukraine did not stand in its way. And the victory of Ukraine is the victory of all civilized humanity. And we believe in this victory. To be honest, I have never doubted that Ukraine would win. And I think that this victory is not far away. It's very close. Thank you. Glory to Ukraine. We in Georgia are all very much rooting for you. We think that this is our struggle.
Thank you very much for this support and indeed for such important and warm words. In fact, we really wish the Georgian people success and really come to a free democratic country, to the power that they see in their country. And, of course, both you and we are fighting for our freedom, for our democracy. I am very grateful to you for this conversation, and I would like to remind the viewers that Vasily Sikuraladze, the former ambassador of Georgia to the United States of America, was with me on the stream today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Glory to Ukraine. We love you.
Glory to the heroes.